We can't wait till the Kennedy report comes out. Well, how is it going to make a difference in your world? It's like these idiots with the Epstein list. How is it going to make a difference in your world if Tom Hanks is on that list?
I'll tell you.
Do you not have to go to work tomorrow? Do you have to do all the same shit? That shit doesn't matter to me. I don't give a fuck who's on the Epstein list. I don't give a fuck who went to Diddy's house. It's got nothing to do with me. But in today's world, because of the internet, it makes us think it's got something to do with us. It has nothing to do with me, man.
It's a show. That's what it is.
What's the fucking show? I don't want to watch that show. So now I got to wait here. 60 years we've been watching the same footage.
All right, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Tyranny. Thank you for joining me. I am your host, Konrad Rogoz. It's May 25th, 2025, and episode 129. It's actually a duplicate episode 129 because episode 129 already happened. It was an interview I did with John Penwell, which I will link here, and you should check it out. We really did something different. But in the interest of having a long database and doing the news consistently, I'm going to go through it, and we're going to do it the classic way, and I've got two stories to run through with you. First story is that on May 21st, the President of the United States met with the President of South Africa. Donald Trump and Cyril Ramaphosa, they held a meeting in the Oval Office, and of course, the meeting went haywire because Donald Trump pointed out and accused the South African president that there's a white genocide going on in South Africa. Long story short, there's confusion and there are points on both sides, as it usually goes, because South Africa has a history of apartheid, which is like the African caste system, and then you talk about Rhodesia and slavery in Africa and all of this, Rwanda. So have been of course racism against the blacks in South Africa, but against the whites in South Africa now as well, because many of those original colonizers, they're just farmers. They're farmers there, and then this is why Donald Trump brought up these videos and brought up these articles and said, look at what they're doing to the farmers. They're killing the white farmers in South Africa. Made a big deal about this, and they have a point, but where he was inaccurate is that he brought up an article of like these white crosses, and he said that they indicate a mass grave, that each one of those crosses is a white family, a white farmer that was killed, and that is of course not accurate. It was a lot like the photo of the guy with the MS-13 tattoos on his knuckles, and of course this has been pointed out. Donald Trump was wrong again. The whole world is laughing at him, right? Well, not to say we shouldn't be laughing at him, but there's something to talk about here. Now, the problem with this is a lot of those white people living in South Africa, they're completely innocent today. They did nothing wrong to anyone, right? But if you go far enough back, a significant portion of them are from a colonizer background, like in the last 100 years or so. And that makes things complicated, because that's just like the Israelis in Israel. So a lot of people living in Israel, they didn't do anything wrong to anybody. They're not to blame for their country doing that. But, if you go 2 generations back, and a couple generations back, somebody literally came in and colonized the land, or what do you want to say, colonizer? Doesn't matter if they bought up the land. If they pushed you off of your land, and this is now their grandson, you're going to hold something against them. And this brings up another thing that I'm not going to go into, which is, well, I will go into it. This is why it's so important to handle injustice on the spot. Because the longer you let something go on without addressing it, like if somebody takes something that's yours, if you don't get it back right then and there, the more time goes back, the more that they're going to have a claim to that thing. They're going to say, why didn't you say something before? We make that claim a lot. Why didn't you say something before? And and that's just the way it goes. But anyway, Trump is in the media now getting blasted for falsely claiming that there's a white genocide. And sure, it's nothing like the Palestinian genocide occurring right now, right? So he's right to be criticized there. But I don't think the president did any worse than like Alex Jones or other famous alternative media figures. Because this guy brought out the articles, he was waving the stacks of papers around the articles, look at all the documents, and it's just like Alex Jones. The end result is misdirection and confusion. because there are some points there. Those articles, those stories of farmers getting killed, like those things actually go on. So he's not lying completely. He's not telling the full story, but then again, he's not completely off the mark. This is why I do This Week in Tyranny, to kind of show where the story really is. And there may be no white genocide going on in South Africa, but there definitely is anti-white eugenics going on in the world. I don't like being this guy that stands up for the white race. It doesn't feel good. I also, a lot of my problems with the world happen to be with white men, right? So I don't like to stick up for the race or the culture, because I've had problems with culture ever since I was a kid. But don't get it twisted. There's anti-white agendas and there's anti-white sentiment in the world, but not by causation, by correlation. Because I don't think it has anything to do with genetics or race. I don't. I think it's just because there's a large cultural overlap between white people and property ownership. An overlap between white people and worldly achievements, between white people and the values of individual rights of equal opportunity and objectivity. That goes for American, Polish, South African. There's something in common there. I'm not saying it's because they come from a common ancestor. I don't give a shit about that. But that is true culturally. At least we can prove that. And long story short, this is why the United Nations and the World Economic Forum are all about global migration. That whole great replacement conspiracy theory, right? I won't give you the definition. You look it up. Well, see, the real story is that there are plenty of false flaggers and gatekeepers throwing chaos and confusion on that great replacement story, because I think you've heard that before, right? From Alex Jones to Tommy Robinson talking about the Muslim invasion, right? To these mass shooters who target Muslims and they target immigrants, and then after they commit these mass shootings like Christchurch, then they find them writing entire books about what they're fighting for, the white race and all that. See, those are false flags. And Donald Trump here, he's actually discrediting the real white genocide going on here. And I hesitate to use that term, but it's true. But he's just doing it by pointing to this easily disproven picture of these white crosses, because those white crosses that he put up there in the Oval Office, that was actually a memorial made by both white and black people trying to deal with the violence and stop the violence against farmers, both white and black. So that's really the story with that instance. But it distracts people from actually talking about the anti-white agenda, which is true. But just to let you know, this is who Trump is today, and this is why he was allowed to win again. He was allowed to win again in order to poison the real conspiracy movement. See, it's just like the anti-immigrant measures. Everything's against the immigrants now, right? Because it's meant to be this way, that it almost touches the Great Replacement. It almost touches the anti-white eugenics agenda, but he never will. Mark my words, he'll never touch it. Because if we really start peeling that onion of what is going against white culture, Judeo-Christian culture, we would find Trump and Biden together with the Clintons and Epstein on the same team, along with his South African buddy, Elon Musk, along with the technocracy movement, with Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. They're on the same team. Because the anti-woke U.S. government is actually still doing the bidding of global government. So when Trump says NBC, ABC, and CBS, they're fake news, they're terrible reporters, no further questions, it sounds right to those who have been watching the fake news over the years, and it may be true. But what this actually allows, this kind of campaign of government against popular culture, against the media, that allows the American government, the USA, to spearhead that globalist plan without the scrutiny of the global media. That's the plan. The plan is now the media is not going to have as much of a voice, and this shit is going to get passed. The budget bills, it's all going to get passed behind the scenes. And to wrap up this meeting and what was really the point of it all, if you watch it, you can have an hour-long version of it on YouTube if you'd like to waste your time that way. Cyril, the president of South Africa, he talked about the G20 summit, which he will host in November. Johannesburg, South Africa is going to host a G20 summit. Very important meeting of the globalist nations and all kinds of international and supranational organizations. But the president of South Africa, he said he wants the United States to play a leadership role, and he actually did this like deferential, like really peasant to a king type of a move. He says he's willing to hand over the leadership role to the United States, right? So it was really, it was very weak. It was very submissive after having this whole thing about the white genocide, and these are both puppets in my view, both the South African and American president. He said he'll give him the leadership role, and this is what this is about, because at G20 they get together all these nations. Putin's gonna be there, the Chinese leader is gonna be there, all these world leaders are gonna be there. The new Mark Carney, the new Canadian Prime Minister, is gonna be there, and then the head of the IMF, of the World Bank, of the United Nations. That's what this is all about. At the end of the day, it's not about racial violence in South Africa. Racial violence is always a means to an end. And this is about bringing American and Israeli AI to Africa and the global South. Because what is going to be for black and white crime today is going to be used against white populations tomorrow. This is what people aren't seeing. And that's the bottom line to that. And my second story, we're going to talk about what happened with the Israeli embassy staffers shot in Washington, D.C. Shot and killed two members of an Israeli embassy. It was Yaron Lashinsky, 30 years old, and Sarah Lim Milgram, 26. And they were killed by, allegedly, Elias Rodriguez, 31 years old, from Chicago. He's accused of opening fire on a group of people on Wednesday night as they left an event for young professionals and diplomats hosted by the American Jewish Committee, an advocacy group that fights anti-Semitism and supports Israel. And of course it was presented that he was saying free Palestine when he did it. He was saying fight for Gaza, right? And he ended up killing not IDF members, but diplomats, young officials in Washington, D.C. And I say, hey, that's just close enough to make sense as a justification for what people think this is, what the story is, that is like he was trying to do guerrilla warfare to end the genocide for Palestinians. It's just close enough to make sense. But don't fall for it, because it doesn't make sense, and this is another false flag. This was a false flag, just like the Brian Thompson shooting. It's close enough for it to play the part, that this was actually a guy that's seeing the Palestinian genocide, and apparently he was like, okay, by any means necessary, we're going to have to bring the war home, we're going to have to fight for these people. I'm not saying that sentiment would be correct or incorrect. I'm just telling you that's not what happened here, and you're being played. And it's a false flag. A false flag means what? It's just someone who's within the reaches of an organization structure, operating covertly within that structure in order to ensure that a specific killing or disaster takes place. That's what this was. This was supposed to go down this way, and on some level, there was a false flag operation involved. Whether the person, Elias Rodriguez, was an operative themselves, or whether they had someone in their ear, or they had some kind of other influence going on, or whether the two people who were killed were influenced or led to find themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time. Who knows what it is? It could have been a hit squad. Who really knows, right? But these false flags have been happening from the JFK assassination to 9/11 to this today. Now, why do I say that? Why am I so sure that this was a false flag? And this is because of the targets. Could you possibly choose a worse target for a political killing? Like, you couldn't try to choose a worse target to perform a political action that's supposed to, like a terrorist action, supposed to advance your movement. Only a child would be worse, right? Because this was a beautiful young couple, engaged, about to be married. So nobody in the Gaza Strip is going to benefit from this, because youth, beauty, family, that's what captures people emotionally. Like, that's what evokes sympathy and empathy for them. So this little, I don't want to call it a little stunt, right? My condolences to the two people that were killed and their families, regardless of who they are or what they might have done, okay? At the end of the day, this thing was set up to fail. It was set up to fail, and then they found his writings. Apparently his writings, the gunmen, it was titled "Escalate for Gaza, Bring the War Home." That's according to the ADL, at least, so take it with a grain of salt, right? Hey guys, isn't it crazy they always find the writings? Like, these guys who are killing innocent people, killing civilians, they just happen to write freaking memoirs all the time. Does that jump out to you as being a little bit shady? Well, I think it is, and I think it's a hallmark of false flags, that they're gonna find a big manifesto. I have one of these manifestos. I actually bought it before it got taken down, of the Highland Park shooter here, and it's a bunch of numbers. It's meaningless, and that's the thing. These crazy mass shooters, they always have a similar MO. It's the false flag MO, and I won't go too deep into that. But I guess we're supposed to believe that terrorists just happen to be avid writers, right? They happen to just be into cryptography and algorithms, or they're going to be historical scholars, and they're going to talk about the Great Replacement and all of this. No. It's just another typical 2 front-page news events that have covert ops written all over them. That's all it is. And if you can tell in my voice, I've been under the weather a little bit, and that's not the only reason that this episode is going to be less than 20 minutes long. It's just because I want to make shorter episodes. I've been trying to, and I'm going to finally succeed. If you are watching this and you haven't gotten enough of me, you should watch the real episode 129, which is my talk with St. John, with John Penwell. And also, if you don't have enough of that, you should check out my album, Rhythms of Discord. Rhythms of Discord is really my first debut album, even though I've done 7 mixtapes before as Stuntman Khan. But this is my real conscious music. This is the conscious music I'm making now going forward. And Rhythms of Discord I recorded in October 2 years ago. So that is released. That's on YouTube. That's on Spotify. And we're less than 3 months away from Soundpath 25, Soundpath to Freedom. Remember, I'm going to be performing this entire album. I'm doing an hour-long performance, which you're going to be able to catch at soundpath.org. We're going to be streaming live on multiple platforms. It's going to be the first ever Truth and Freedom Music Festival. So join me there. I'm saving my voice for that, if you want to be part of something like that. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me on This Week in Tyranny, and I've got another video coming at you, so stay tuned, keep your head up, stay on your toes, and don't buy the bullshit. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week on This Week in Tyranny.
In the world, no space, population, density, vast, unexplored frontiers, they got us already packed in a cage, held down by his environment, the one with the key to all the locks, in the barrel with the crabs, get pulled down for trying it.